he offers him 100,000 dirhams. Samrat ibn Jundub says, 100,000 dirhams you want me to sell my akhirah for? Do you not fear God? You know, how could you even think of offering me such a thing? But as the Godfather says, you know, every man has a price. And if they say, I can't be bought, you know, that's in Mario Puzo's book. He says, if a man says, I cannot be bought, then you haven't offered him enough money. Everyone has a price. Just keep pushing. Eventually they'll turn. Taban, except the believer. The believer has sold everything he has for Allah Azza wa Jal. So he offers him 200,000 dirhams. Sorry, 300. He moves from 100 immediately to 300 or 200. 200,000, and he says, I would not do such a thing. This is a terrible thing. So then he says, 400,000 dirhams. So he says, okay. You know, he puts his hand in his hand and he accepts. And then because Samrat ibn Jundub was someone that saw Rasulullah and spoke to Rasulullah and collected narrations from Rasulullah. And so he says, Qala Rasulullah, that this verse came down upon Abdul Rahman ibn Muljam, the verse of the one that sells themselves to gain approval from Allah. And the other verse, the one that says is the most violent of adversaries to Allah, is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Hello to you people, someone says this to them, you would laugh at the thought that someone would actually believe this. But in those times they used to believe, especially when this person was a Sahabi, because this is the whole concept of saying the Sahabi is a Sahabi, is a mu'min, they don't lie, they're truthful. It's so that these narrations could be pushed forward in order to abase the Imam and bring down the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Throughout history, Islamic history, I think he's probably the most hated, Amir al-Mu'mineen was the most hated individual throughout Islamic history. If you look during that history, especially through Banu Umayyah, Banu al-Abbas, he was the most hated individual. In fact, during the Abbasids' time, that people used to try and conceal their birth because they didn't want anyone to know they were from the posterity of a believer or a follower of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Even today, you meet people living in these countries that are staunch against believers. For example, you hear someone, he's got his name, and they'll name generic names so they cannot be detected. I remember a doctor was killed in Pakistan. His name was Dr. Hussein something, I can't remember the surname. But he got killed and he was a Sunni. But they killed him because his name was Hussein. To that point that they would kill, even up till today, anyone that belongs. And you people experienced this at the time when they were actually putting up on Facebook, the shops that were owned by Shia. Do not go to these shops. These are shops for Rafida. They'd actually enter the people's shops. They'd threaten them. If you don't close your shop, or burn down your shop, or beat you up. So this is the remnants of this history. This is the history that they experienced. Thing is, the ultimate thing about Amir al-Mu'mineen is if you want to sting someone that doesn't like Amir al-Mu'mineen, just mention a virtue of his. This also shows you the hatred is deep within people that even claim to be his followers. Whenever you mention a virtue of the Imam, they get upset. How can you mention this virtue? You know, one of the best examples, the example of Joshua, the example of Yusha ibn Nun. Yusha ibn Nun, Joshua was the wasi of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. During the battle, I think it was the battle of Jericho, I can't remember, but he raised his hands and made everything stand still, made the sun stop, made everything stand still. This is wilayah takwini. This have the ability to stop, authority over the creation. No Jew denies this, it's in the Bible. No Christian denies this. No Sunni denies this. And no Shia denies this. Even the Sushis, the ones that lean against the narrations of miraculous achievement. No one leans against this. They say Joshua stopped the sun. And number one, he stopped the position of where they were. Number one, Joshua was not a prophet. He was a wasi. He was the successor of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. The second you mention the same action with Amir al-Mu'mineen, everyone puts their hand up and says, stop. Takhanta. Now you've gone too far. Now you have exaggerated the position of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And this always used to happen. Al-Aqsasi, who was with, he was a alim at the time of Al-Muntasir al-Abbasi, when they were walking to the grave of Salman, and Muntasir says to him, what do you think about what the Ghulat say about the death of Salman? Because you know the hadith of the death of Salman, when Salman died, he died in Al-Madain. And Amir al-Mu'mineen was in Al-Medina. The distance is about 1,000 kilometers. The narration says Amir al-Mu'mineen had prayed Salat al-Maghrib. He left Medina to Al-Madain, 1,000 kilometers. He washed and shrouded and prayed upon and buried Salman and returned before Fajr. You think about 1,000 kilometers. To do all this in 1,000 kilometers, and this is not someone that rides a horse. Physically, it's impossible. So there had to be a miracle that took place. A miracle took place for him to be able to do this. So Muntasir al-Abbasi says, so what do you think of what the Ghulat say here? You know, because automatically that's what they say. When you say Amir al-Mu'mineen, a virtue, they say this is ghulu. You have exaggerated the position of the Imam. So the alim turns around and says to Muntasir, he replies with a poem. And in the poem he says to him, that you deny the night that the successor of Rasulullah went from Medina to the Madain, when he was called to wash the body of the holy Salman, or the righteous Salman. Because you say for him to be able to travel this distance is surprising or unusual. He said, yet you sane people read in the Quran that Asif, the successor of Sulaiman, bought the throne of Bilqis. He bought from a further distance before what? Before Sulaiman could even flinch. He said, you all accept this. And I find this strange. You're astonished by what Amir al-Mu'mineen has done. I'm astonished with the fact that you believe this story and not the other one. He says to him then, if Ahmad is khayrul mursaleen, if he is the best of the messengers, then Ali huwa khayrul wasiyin aw kullul hadith haba. That either Rasulullah, if he is khayrul, and we know this without a doubt, there's not a Muslim on the planet, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There is not a Muslim on the planet that will deny, there's not a Muslim on the planet that will deny that Rasulullah Muhammad is the greatest messenger of Allah. So either his successor is the best of the successors, or all the things we are discussing, they're worthless. Everything's worthless. It has no meaning. But apparently when it comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, when it comes especially to him, he is the criterion. When you want to know if someone believes or doesn't believe. If someone is truthful in their belief or not. He's not one of those Muslims that 1 + 1 has to equal 2. It has to equal the equation that's in his head. And the way he functions and the way he understands. He reads a hadith. I remember once when I was younger, I called a sheikh. And this sheikh was one of the ones on our side. In the terms that he was a follower of Ahlul Bayt. But when I say one of those that is extreme to the other side. I mentioned the hadith to him. This is the hadith I said to him. I said to him, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم to Amir al-Mu'minin, يا علي ثلاثة إن أنصفتهم ظلموك. Do you know what he said? Before he said three, that if you are fair with them, they will oppress you. And he said this hadith is batil. Straight away, I said to him, why? You haven't even heard the rest of. He said the Prophet is telling the Imam not to be fair. I said, where did you come up with that? Wait till I finish reading the narration. Let me finish the narration first. Where did you come with the idea? Because the second, it wasn't the comment I mentioned. The moment I said Ali, the second I mentioned the name of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was afraid I'd mention a virtue. He was afraid I'd mention something that was great with regard to the commander of the faithful, and this was enough for him not to handle. Imam is the Furqan. He is the criterion. He is what differentiates between belief and disbelief, as the narration has said. And because of all this damage that has done to ruin the reputation of the Imam, this is what has led people to the position that they held against the Imam. So we move back towards the story of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, when the assailant had struck the Imam, and the Imam said that I'm victorious or I'm successful by the Lord of the Kaaba. The people that were around caught Abdul Rahman ibn Mulsham and they took him as a prisoner. And the Imam was taken afterwards and had his head bandaged, and the people sat around him. And at this point, the people were weeping because a big calamity had taken place. And the narration says it was like the day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam had been killed. That day was one of those days that was a real sad day for the people. Now, while they were with the Imam, certain things happened during the time the Imam was lying down that are of utmost importance. The first is that when they came to give the Imam something to drink, they gave him milk or yogurt to drink. The Imam said, have you given him, the prisoner, something to drink? Could you imagine anyone is in that frame of mind? What do you think, for example, what do you think people do hit and runs? Some people, if they hit someone, they drive off. I'm not talking about the ones that drive off because they're cowardly and they don't want to help. In some cases, people hit someone and drive off because they're afraid of the reaction of what will happen. And this is an accidental hit, and they're afraid. Because people react in the worst possible ways when someone's been killed. This person has deliberately not only killed a person, he's killed a man that is praying, and this man is the commander of the faithful. And this man is the Khalif, the one that is controlling all the Muslims, yet he's still in the safety of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam while Amir al-Mu'mineen is alive. Amir al-Mu'mineen is still under the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal and still rules with the laws of Allah. Because if you want to know how a people are, look at the way a race treats its prisoners. Go to everywhere in the world. Do you want to know about how civilized the nation is? Look at how their prisoners are treated. Every country in the world, go look at how prisoners are treated. You know, sometimes when I'm going to give this as a positive note for the Zionists. I usually batter them a bit, so I'm just going to give a positive note for them. I asked one person once, would you rather be in an Arab prison or an Israeli prison? He said, hell no, I'd rather be in the Israeli prison. This is what he said. How civilized, it's the first time I say something positive, I've got to say something at this point. How civilized a nation is. If you would rather be in an Australian prison, or would you rather be in a Chinese prison? You think about it, how civilized a nation is. The Islamic nation is supposed to be the most civilized nation. The best treatment to their prisoners. that the Khalif is about to be given something to drink, he asks about the prisoner's welfare first. Has he been given something to drink first? And he says, and I will not drink until he is given something to drink. That you have to give him something to drink. Because this is the treatment and this is the Islamic way of treating people. Another thing that takes place with Amir al-Mu'mineen is he lets you understand when you're losing someone that you can weep. The people around were weeping, but there's an example that takes place with Asbagh ibn Nabata where he refuses to leave and he wants to sit with the Imam for the final moments, sit with him. So he comes in and starts to weep. He says, I want to see Amir al-Mu'mineen. He tells, Imam Hassan alayhi salam tells him to leave outside the door. He says, no, please let me in so I can see Amir al-Mu'mineen. So Imam Hassan alayhi salam lets him in to see the Imam. So he sits next to the Imam and he is weeping. So Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Ya Asbagh, why do you weep? I'm heading towards paradise. So the Imam says to him, I'm headed towards paradise. Asbagh replies, I know this, but I weep because I will miss you. So in other words, at the point where the Imam is leaving, this was the biggest loss for ourselves. But as for the person dying, that they're returning to their Creator. An example for people when it comes to farewelling someone. It has more to do with the fact that I'm missing this person rather than the fact that they're being taken away because they go into a much better place. Another thing that takes place with the Imam is his final words. The final words of the Imam, Salamullah alayh, that he looks towards the corner of the room and he says, before he passes away, he says, Assalamu alaikum ya Rasul Rabbi. That he says his salam to the angels that are there, and then he says, لِمِثْلِ هَذَا فَلْيَعْمَلِ الْعَامِلُونَ. For the hereafter, for paradise is the way that we should act. The thing is, if you compare this to other people that got killed, or other people that died, and what they viewed the hereafter and all their actions and where they were headed to, as opposed to the stance of Amir al-Mu'mineen in this stage, that he was confident, he had fulfilled his covenant with Allah Azza wa Jal, and he was returning to his Creator. The final point that I wanted to mention with the martyrdom of the commander of the faithful was one of the points that a lot of people have mentioned this in their lives. A lot of people write this and they recall this. You hear it in many discussions, and it's very important. It shows how the Imam used to act in secret. All his actions with Allah Azza wa Jal, the majority of them were done in secret. They were between him and Allah. And this was evident when the Imam was taken to be buried, and a poor man came up to the Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam and he said to him that I'll be in need, and there used to be a man that used to come and give me, and for the last 3 days this man has not come. He didn't even know who he was, and the people did not know, because the Imam wouldn't go around and humiliate them. If you look today, one of the worst things you'll see on a lot of these network channels, I'm sorry, not network, these satellite channels, is they'll humiliate people. They bring them on and they say, look at her, look how poor she is, look at her kids, they film her, their legs, look at their feet, they've got no shoes, give them money. They humiliate them, they degrade them, they abase them for the whole world to watch. Give tabaru'at so we can help these poor people. They totally humiliate these people. Amir al-Mu'mineen used to not only not advertise what he was doing, but he would even conceal from them that he was the one giving them. He was the one that was giving. These are the lessons that we learn on these nights. Tonight is the second night of supplication to Allah, of the narrations that say is of the nights we consider to be possibly Laylatul Qadr. It's a night for you to reflect and a night for you to supplicate, especially for all those around you, everyone that's asked you. Most importantly, supplicate for Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our Master, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salli Allahumma ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tayyibin al-tahirin.